special budget meeting today at 2:13 p.m. and thank you for your attendance. We might just move that we, so is C1 first on the agenda? It is, so we don't have to change anything. Okay, C1, in-June retirement village support.
You will have to
Change the order.
procedural motion that's on the screen there.
Right, okay, gotcha. What I'd like to move that council first consider item C1, in-June retirement village support. Do we have a seconder? Councillor McMullen. Any opposition? We'll go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
8-0. Okay, C1, in-June retirement village support. I would like to move that council acknowledge the support during 2021-22 for the amount of $100,000 to provide a financial contribution of $65,000 to the in-June Mount Hutton Retirement Village as part of the 2022-23 operational budget. 3, that this be provided from operational funds included in the 2022-23 operational budget as a new one-off project. And 4, invite well, actually, I think we need to, and we've had a talk that we were going to invite them to meet with council about
representatives of Pinaroo Roma.
Yeah, Pinaroo Roma to meet with council to discuss the future year. And yeah, okay, so we've got a seconder, Councillor Ladbrook. Did anyone have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thanks,
Councillor
Mr. Mayor.
Hancock.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering whether there would be opportunity to discuss, like, how does the community know that council is investing such a large amount of money? So that opportunity that we can do some advertising or some, advertising is not the right word, media release around the financial contribution as a good news story.
Well, I think if this gets up, we'll obviously be able to talk to, Pinaroo about this and obviously the retirement village. So I think that could be dealt with then. But we've got a mover in a second. Do we have any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak to it? I certainly do. I do believe it. If we don't do this, we will lose a place where people can have a great place to live in June. So I do believe we are the council that obviously we would. What has been really great about this is reduced from last year because more people are there. So it's a good news story. But if council doesn't get involved, then hopefully it becomes less and less. Then the people of Injune that want to retire in Injune cannot necessarily do that if they don't have their own means. Okay. Does anyone? You got a question, or do you want to speak?
I just want to speak.
Okay. So anyone in opposition? Okay. Does the mover would Councillor Ladbrook like to speak?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Hancock. I think we need a bit of publicity to say that we have given, something. Otherwise, people don't realise that council do look after these sort of things. Like even handing over a cheque or something, in the paper, to let them know that we do help them. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak? We're going to go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
8-0. Okay, moving on. Okay, item 3.1, Statement of Estimated Financial Position 2021-22. Do we have a mover? Councillor Guthrie.
I'd like to move that pursuant to section 205 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the statement of estimated financial position for the previous financial year, 2021-22, be received and its contents noted.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Mullen. Any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak to it? We're going to go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
Okay, 8-0. Item 3.2, adoption of budget 2022-23. I would like to move pursuant to section 169 and 170 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council's budget for the 2022-23 financial year, incorporating the statement of financial position, the statement of cash flow, the statement of income and expenditure, the statement of changes in equity, the long-term financial forecast, the revenue statement, the revenue policy, an assessment of business activities to determine if they meet the threshold for classification as a significant business activity, relevant measures of financial sustainability, the total value of change expressed as a percentage in the rates and utility charges levied for the financial year compared with rates and utility charges levied in the previous budget, estimated activity statement, and supplementary rates and charges rebate and concessions policy, and supplementary capital and one-off projects as tabled be adopted. Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor McMullen. Any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak? Anyone wish to speak? Then we're going to go to
Speak for or against?
for or against. Anyone wish to speak? Well, is there any opposition to the motion? Okay, does the mover wish to speak to the motion? I certainly will. I believe this is a pivotal year in the Maranoa. Council has been making some very important changes to get ready for the future. I believe in an extremely tough budget where we're in a situation where we've lost federal government funding for roads, and as well as being in a situation that that loss of funding is on average in the state for councils that have lost it was 2%, and Maranoa lost 10% of their funding from that grant. So we have situations like that and many other challenges in the Maranoa. I believe if this is supported, this is a budget to support people in the Maranoa and to cement what council's done in the past, and looking forward to a brighter future for the community. Okay, does anyone wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. This is a motion I will not be supporting. Once again, I will lose, but that doesn't make this right and me wrong. For the last however many weeks, we have come together to have budget briefings, and I, like Councillor Hancock, was so pleased to see that we were going to sit together and work through the budget as a team. We even had expert advice with our cents in the dollar to try and fix the mess from last year. We were all able to bring forward scenarios that we worked through with our rates expert, hoping that we may be able to compromise with each other for a great outcome. Councillor Hancock and Councillor O'Neill and I developed a scenario which was 5% rates increase across the board, capping rural at 5%, with 10% rate increase in oil and gas and commercial and industrial. As a ratepayer of commercial and industrial land, I would have been more than happy to accept an increase, as this category received a reprieve of 65% reduction 2 years ago and a freeze the following year. Having to put 10% on any category was not an easy decision, but even with this increase, we still came out with $1 million deficit. But our plan was to do this over 2 years to then get back to a surplus. The sad thing about Unity Maranoa's rate scenario is that we cannot afford it, and the services that are already stretched will be stretched even further. I say Unity Maranoa because they were reminded of what they signed up for 4 years. I don't know who in our community would have thought rates freeze on certain sectors for 4 years is sustainable. Another fact that the oil and gas sector with this scenario will not get the rates freeze. They will be on average go up about 20%. This means we are not honouring our word to them from 2 years ago when we put their rates up 70 to 120%, with an understanding that if we did have to put their rates up, it would be CPI, which was 1.88 back then, and now of course it's 5.1. The community of the Maranoa want to pay their way. The people of the Maranoa want council to be able to fix roads, rubbish, water, gas, and sewerage. They want our town to look and feel as if it's moving forward. My biggest concern is that this will happen again next year as well, and what happens the year after that. Whoever sits at this table will be left with a mess to clean up and will have to make hard decisions that the majority of this council will not make in order to stay popular. I know the Mayor gets to have the last say in this debate today, and I know he will pick away at my argument about the community he hears from and what they expect from him and his. But I can tell you now we must live in two different communities, as the people that talk to me can't believe that anyone can freeze rates for a third year and believe they are looking after their community. I know this budget will go through. My only hope is that people see it for what it is. It's not good governance, and as I've said, I'm just sad that when I thought we were going to work as a team to deliver a budget for the good of the Maranoa, once again, the Mayor is steering us in the wrong direction. Again, just ticking a box for Unity Maranoa.
Okay, does anyone wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Ladbroke.
First of all, I'd just like to thank Edwina and the staff for all the work they've put in. I think with our since our term, this is the first budget that's actually turned up on time, so that's very good, Edwina and the team. And I do believe that this budget is responsible and good for the Maranoa. I think a lot of the community people are very happy, which will leave us in a good financial position. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, does anyone wish to speak against the motion? Please go ahead.
It is with disappointment that I will be voting against a budget for the third time of this term of council. For many weeks now, we have been having briefings preparing the budget. Very quickly, we realised that it was going to be a very tight budget with not much money to spend and a lot of expenses to cover. In my opinion, this is due to the decisions that have been made by this term of council over the last 2 years. There was not a surplus last year, as promised by the Mayor, which is what I had expected and stated at the budget meeting last year. I am a big believer in consequences for actions, both positive and negative, and from what I am seeing, the consequences of the decisions made at the table are being realised. So with a grim look at the finances, staff were expected to find cuts to the operational budget, cuts that I simply can't support, as I believe they will affect the services to the community. Councillors were then given the opportunity to come up with rating scenarios to balance the budget. In my opinion, to be financially viable and ethical, the region needed to move with CPI, 5.1% for residential and rural, and 10% on commercial industry and oil and gas. Now, don't get me wrong, and I fully understand that the popular vote would not be to increase the rates at all, but that is not the responsible decision for the residents of the Maranoa, and what they really want is value for money. Just because it is a popular decision doesn't make it a right decision for the financial sustainability of the Maranoa region. The Mayor made it clear that he wanted another rate freeze on certain sectors of the community, but to achieve a surplus of $29, he has had to increase the rates in the oil and gas sector by around 20%. I personally don't think this is right, to only give an increase to the oil and gas sector when Council has already increased that sector's rates by between 70 to 120% 2 years ago. Once again, it was disappointing and frustrating that Council could not get to the point where all councillors could endorse the budget. In my opinion, council simply can't afford to have another rate freeze in these sectors, the third year of rate freezes in these sectors for the Maranoa. Council, and so therefore the community, is looking down the barrel of a year where there is a rate freeze in certain sectors and a loss in financial assistance grants, so a massive deduction in revenue. We all know the cost of living has increased, and so therefore the cost to council has increased. So by having a rate freeze, it is a double loss for council and therefore the community. Not only do we not take the extra income with the rate increase, council still has to pay the increased price of goods and services. With this budget the Mayor and Unity has put forward, council may find themselves in a situation where they have a negative budget again this year, or in a situation where they are going to have to cut projects or services to communities because council has run out of budget. If council is talking about efficiencies, we should start at the top. How can we expect our staff to find efficiencies when we as council don't adhere to the same expectation, for example, continuing to purchase new assets when we have not got the money to maintain the ones we already have? I am, however, excited that I have had the opportunity to have input into endorsing the list of projects that will enhance the livability of the region if the budget is endorsed today. Although I do think we have overcommitted ourselves with these projects, and this will therefore dip into the cash that we have in the bank. I would like to acknowledge and thank CEO Edwina and your officers who have worked tirelessly throughout this budget process. I am very concerned about the impacts this budget will have on the future of the Maranoa's financial sustainability, therefore impacting future councils and having the potential in forcing them to make extremely hard decisions, such as having to increase rates, which would have a serious negative impact on the ratepayer. As I've been saying for the last two rate freeze budgets, and again this year, I believe small increments of increase is much easier for ratepayers to meet than a massive rate increase in any 1 year. I implore you, fellow councillors, to think about the legacy this council will leave for the future of the Maranoa region. When you don't increase the rates across all sectors, forcing you to make serious cuts to the operational budget, and yet to increase our employee costs to budget for the 8 directors, but not an increase in staff, actually a substantial staff vacancy list, I believe the only outcome will be a loss of services to the Maranoa community. This is simply not acceptable, and based on this, I cannot support this budget.
Okay, does anyone wish to speak for the motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'll speak.
Okay, Councillor Burkett.
As council, we undertook a full review process with John Perry from Mead and Perry for our rating system, reviewing and adding categories to enable a fairer rating structure. These are unprecedented times with interest rates and diesel all going up. On top of that, with COVID pandemic still lingering over us. I sat on this and thought about the pros and cons and what we stood for back in 2020, not knowing any of the above was around the corner. And I think out of the 3 scenarios, which all increased oil and gas, 9%, 13% and 17%, give or take a point. I think the one we voted on last week, I'm happy with what went through, and I think it's best for the people of the Maranoa. The budget is balanced, and with the new organisation structure now moving forward and measures in place to improve efficiencies, I feel that we're heading in the right direction. I would like to commend Madam CEO Edwina, Officer Cindy and Claire on their tremendous effort to not only get the budget done, but to have it done on time. And also to all the directors, managers and officers for their massive efforts contributed to get this achieved. I know with losing significant funding that we usually get, it would have been a huge task. So once again, to all involved, congratulations on a job well done.
Okay, does anyone wish to speak against the motion? Councillor O'Neill.
I'll be speaking against. This is my 11th budget for the region, and it does continue to be an honour to serve as one of the 9 people the community has put their trust in to make the decisions on their behalf. My commitment of securing the long-term future of the region is why I stood for council in 2012, and is why I continue to serve the community today. The future of the Maranoa communities are reliant on a long-term vision to ensure the next generation can too call this place home. My commitment to this goal has continued to evolve since first elected, and has been further sharpened as I continue to be the youngest in the room, and now with my own generation coming behind me, I'm even more focused. We need to think long term, look beyond election cycles, look beyond our own election outcomes, and make the best decision for the community of today and the people that come behind them. For me, this budget does not do this. Our community is seeing and feeling the increase our national economy is currently having, and council operations and therefore services are not immune to this either. Today, we have before us a budget that, whilst it contains a number of important projects, and I encourage the community to have a look at the projects that are included in the budget, and investments into key infrastructure like our rural roads and facilities that I support, I cannot support the rating methodology of another rate freeze on all rating categories bar one. For me, this is just irresponsible. It's irresponsible because each ratepayer has the responsibility to invest in their community. As a young dad, I feel the heavy responsibility of setting our next generation up for success. Not moving, at least with CPI across all council rating categories, is moving that responsibility to, in this budget's case, one rating category, but it is passing the financial burden to future generations of the Maranoa community. The conversations I've had with rural, commercial, residential and oil and gas ratepayers is they understand they need to pay rates. They understand the need for council to deliver services to our community, and they believe we must continue to invest in our community and are willing to pay their fair share and understand the importance of at least CPI movements. As has already been shared by Councillors Taylor, Hancock and myself took the opportunity to develop a rating scenario that would have seen residential increase by CPI at 5%, rural 5% with a capping of 5%, and oil and gas and commercial and industrial increase by 10%. This would have delivered council an approximately $1 million deficit with a goal of returning an operating surplus in 2023. This is not the scenario put forward by Mayor Golder and his Unity Maranoa Party councillors. For me, the development of the annual budget is one of the highest priorities we are tasked with as councillors. I've got to say it was refreshing to return to council budget briefings, and this process was, in my view, far more inclusive than the past two budgets. So for that, I do say thank you. I want to see our region grow and prosper. I want the community to be proud of their council for backing their community and investing in our future. The list of needs for our community continues to grow, but we must be realistic on what we can and can't cover and be open to our community if we can't. Council is owned by the community. Its rates are community money, and we must always remember that. It's disappointing for me that as a decision maker for the community, we have a budget not moving with inflation across all categories. It's my view that this is fiscally irresponsible and therefore will not be supporting the adoption of the 2022-2023 annual budget.
Okay, does anyone wish to speak for the budget? Councillor, or for the motion, Councillor Guthrie?
Yes, I'm going to support this particular motion today because I believe that it's in the best interest looking forward. And I would like to then commend also our CEO for engaging on our behalf an external group of consultants who have been working with us since approximately March and have had a number of different visits out here. And I think on behalf of all of us here, we have learnt so much during those visits. We've increased our knowledge about rating, local government requirements, the effects of capping. So it's been a very productive learning opportunity. And I also think it's been wonderful to be able to have a number of scenarios that we've been able to road test and to be able to look at the effect. So I think we sit here today with the best possible knowledge based on the scenarios that we were looking at. And I would like to just say that I think that to move forward, the changing of the categories will have a significant benefit, and I look forward to then being able to review in the next 12 months and tweak so that we've got a system that really does work well.
Okay. I think that's everyone.
Probably more of a statement than a for and against, Mr Mayor. In the last term of council in approximately 2017, land valuations undertaken by the Department of Resources at the time were alarming in terms of inconsistencies. The flow-on effect of the land valuations meant that some Maranoa Council rate assessments would increase by a small amount and others would rise significantly. After a long deliberation, Council made the decision to introduce capping. In the 2021-22 budget, when faced with the challenge of some Department of Resources land valuations going down, others up, Council made the decision to raise the rates, to raise the cents in the dollar and cap all categories at 0%. This meant all rate assessments were asked to pay the same dollar value as the previous year. Due to a number of assessments being amalgamated over the 2021-22 financial year, their capping was lost, giving landholders a large increase in rates. By a resolution, Council adjusted each individually affected rates notice. This year, Council made the decision to do a major overhaul on its rating categories. After engaging a professional rates consultancy company, the decision was made to increase the number of rating bands within the rural sector from 2 to 7, 20 hectares to 80 hectares, 80 hectare to 1,000 hectares, 1,000 to 5,000 hectares, 5,000 to 15,000 hectares, 15,000 to 25,000 hectares, 25,000 to 50,000 hectares, 50,000 hectares and above. Introducing these additional categories will enable Council to adjust each band individually to compensate and minimise the impact of any irregularity and changes to future valuations without using the capping mechanism. I understand that some councils are keen to deliver a rates freeze. These proposed rating scenarios don't reflect a true rates freeze. With one category, some assessments will go down, others will go up capped at 0% increase, whilst another category could go up to 30% without any capping. I acknowledge that Council have had a reduction of $1.7 million per annum in revenue from the financial assistance grants and a reduction in some valuations within the resource sector, leaving Council with a reduction in total rates revenue for the 22-23 financial year. Irrespective of this, while ever Council continue to use the capping mechanism, especially capped at 0%, there will be ongoing discrepancies within the rating system. In particular, any future amalgamated valuations introduced by the Department of Resources, irrespective of the cents in the dollar. I believe there were other proposed scenarios that offer a better outcome for Council in the longer term. Had Council chosen to raise the capping in line with CPI this year, it would have been the first step in removing capping.
Okay, I think everyone else has spoken. I'll sum up. I believe that local government is the closest to the people. I stood for local government to be able to support our local communities and always be there for communities. And one of the things that I've been so pleased with, you almost never hear of a situation where this council has not supported people in need or been there for the communities. And when I move around the Maranoa, it is something that gets reflected in having conversations with people. I'm also not a councillor that will make comments about other councillors. I will focus on being positive, and I believe that this motion that is up will really support growth in the Maranoa. There was one situation where I heard a story of every time rent goes up, every time the rates go up, rent goes up for a residential person in the Maranoa. That's a classic example where if we can do what we can with rates, that does benefit people in the Maranoa. And as it is been shown that a lot of people struggle to make ends meet, and we need to think of them. I believe being in council is a privileged position, which comes with remuneration, and I think we need to think of the people that don't have those benefits. We need to think of the people. I was hearing one person saying that they're going without a meal because they cannot afford the extra cost of rent that's happening at the moment. And generally, landlords, a lot will put, when the rates go up, the rent goes up, is the feedback that I've had. So we need to do whatever we can to be able to improve the lot of the residents of the Maranoa. And I believe that in the past we've had increases that have been above CPI, and because of that, we are having a period of resetting situations, and we have also just come out of a drought, and everyone knows that's been on the land for a long time. Good times are not around for that long. So I believe there's many things that are happening in the Maranoa that are positive. And I'd also like to thank our CEO, Edwina, and also Cindy and Claire. Thank you very much for everything that you've done. And I'll be looking forward to, for the first time in a long time, that the organisation will have its budget handed down in the financial year. So they've got a full 12 months with that budget. So on that note, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
All those against? That's 4 all, and I'll use my casting vote in the positive, so it's carried 5-4. Okay, moving on to the next item of business. Page 3.3, page 100. Debt borrowing policy. Do we have a mover? Councillor Guthrie.
I'd like to move that council adopt the debt borrowings policy for 2022-23.
We have a seconder. Councillor Ladbrook. Any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak to it? We're going to go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
8-0. Thank you. 3.4. Differential general rating categories and description 2022-23. Do we have a mover? I'll move that Council 1, pursuant to Section 81 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the categories into which rateable land is categorised, the description of those categories, and pursuant to Sections 81 brackets 4 and 81 brackets 5 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the method by which land is to be identified and included in its appropriate category below, and 2, delegate the Chief Executive Officer the power pursuant to Section 81.4 and 81.5, both in brackets, of the Local Government Regulation 2012 to identify the rating categories to which each parcel of rateable land belongs. So do we need to say all of the tables?
Say table as presented, 1, 2.
Okay, with the table as presented.
1, 2.
1, new differential categories, 1 through to
91.
1 through to 91. Is that clear for all councillors?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a seconder?
Sorry, through the chair. Sorry, Kelly, can I just, what have we got there? I thought it was only, just want to double check that. Okay, thank you.
There's a couple missing from 80 to 91. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Okay, Councillor Ladbrook, any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak to it? We'll go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
8-0.
Next page is,
Thank you. Item 3.5, differential general rates 2022-23. I'd like to move that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 80 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the differential general rate to be made and levied for each differential general rate category and pursuant to Section 77 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the minimum general rate to be made and levied for each differential general rate category be set out in the table, be as set out in the table below. So we have from new differential category from
Table 1 to 91.
1 to 91. Yeah. Okay, that's clear, councillors. Do we have a seconder? Please go ahead.
I'll second it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we've got a seconder. Please go ahead, councillor Hancock.
So was that with the minimums that have been increased
No,
according to the
no, it
email?
hasn't changed. It's all as what the documents you've got. Nothing has changed.
So
It's,
we had an
it's-
email the other day saying that we had to agree to understanding that the minimum rates were going up, which is different to what it was.
No, nothing has changed in the end. Is that correct?
Yep, through the
Also,
chair,
I'm
it was just,
confused, I'm sorry.
no, it was just confirming that you understood the model as it was presented, yes. So that whilst the minimum rate changes, it doesn't actually change the rating categories, because what it does is provide a minimum rate in those categories, whereby if someone is paying a higher amount, that is the floor, so to speak, of that rate. So that there were some conversations around whether that was the intention or not, but the email was to make councillors aware that the model that was presented, that was the minimum rate. So that that the minimum rate reflected in last year's rate was X. The minimum rate endorsed on the 22nd of June to put to the budget today was X, and that email was to confirm that councillors understood that.
Okay, and so for me to understand, I just want to make sure, so there will be some categories in residential and residential rural, small rural and rural residential that actually will go up. They actually won't get a rate freeze.
No, they actually won't go up. I have a table that indicates the detail of that if you want to see that. The reality is the minimum changes, right, but the number of the individual rating notices within those categories will not go up. They will stay the same or go down.
So a person who was on the minimum last year for their rates,
And it's
they're going to pay the exactly same rate as this year.
The minimum's reflected by the valuation, and the detail in that category was whilst the minimum dollar amount changes there, none of those ratepayers will be affected. All of those ratepayers will have a rate that's capped at 0 or decreases.
Yeah.
So the capping
Yeah.
the capping of 0 keeps them. So
Yeah.
even though they should be going up, they're getting capped at 0, so they're not going up.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so we had a second of councillor Burkett. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? I'll speak to the motion. I do believe that this is budget for growth in the Maranoa. I do believe that it's very refreshing when that we actually have a situation where a plan is made and is carried out. I'm looking forward to this year that we will be really looking for efficiencies that we will have in our organisation and supporting our staff to do that. And I believe that the differential general rates will support the community in what they need to do. Okay, does anyone wish to speak against the motion? Councillor O'Neill?
I'm against this particular motion, largely for the argument that the Deputy Mayor expressed earlier around capping. I was a member of the council when we introduced capping, and we did it for an important and legitimate reason. I think it is now upon us to start staging an approach to remove capping. We have the ability to change rates in the dollar to reflect increases and decreases in valuation, and that's what we should be doing. keeping the capping for as long as we did, particularly on the rural sector, has added to some complexities and some challenges from ratepayers in this last 12 months, and I foresee that is going to continue, given that we will see properties change hands, we will see properties inherited, the circumstances will continue, and therefore I can't support this motion because it maintains the current cap, and I think we should be moving towards a process where we are removing capping in a staged approach, taking the community on the journey with us. So I won't be supporting the resolution as it stands.
Does anyone wish to speak for the motion or against the motion? I'll sum up. I actually believe in capping. I think capping stops large increases for ratepayers. I do believe we've got so much instability in our valuations, it's not funny. I don't believe it's an exact science. I do believe that what is positive about this year is that we have actually done a rates review. We've changed our categories, which hopefully will reduce the need for capping. I've had experience where ratepayers have received via large increases in valuations, large increases in their rates, and they don't agree with the fact that, and they even had some capping. Imagine if they didn't have capping. So I definitely believe that capping is needed when we have major changes in valuations, because the community will say that that's a shock to run the same business as before, what changed overnight, and obviously the relativity over time will be caught up, but you can also do that by introducing different rating categories, and this year we've introduced quite a few different rating categories, and I think what's great is if this is supported, we'll have 12 months to actually see how it is performing and see whether there's much more stability in the rating model. Okay, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
All those against? For all, and I'll use my casting vote in favour of the motion, so that's carried 5-4, if I can call for a division. Okay, moving on. 3.6, setting the limit of increase in the amount of general rates 2022-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor Ladbroke.
I'd like council motion that pursuant of section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and section 99.
I think the council is on the wrong page.
Okay.
139?
Page 139.
Sorry.
Councillor.
59.
Oh.
Close.
Yeah, sorry about that. 139.
That's all right. I'd like to move that council, as required by section 172, in brackets 2 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, but subject to paragraphs A to E below, records that pursuant to section 116 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the amount of the differential general rate to be levied for the 2022-23 financial year on the categories of land identified in the table below be limited to an amount no more than an amount equal to the amount of general rates levied on that land in the previous financial year, increased by the percentage identified in table 1 below. Do I need to category 1 to 91?
That's not the end of it.
There's more.
There's more.
Number
Number
two.
2.
1.2. Oh, sorry, yes, it is Steve, thank you.
The bottom of page
142.
Page 142, just, there's a couple of lines, and they flip over the next day.
Okay. The limitation of increase in the differential general rate will not apply to land where land A, there has been a change in valuation other than the valuation of the entire local government area during the current or previous financial year, or B, there has been a change in land area during the current or previous financial year, unless that their change is a result of council or the state government entity, is it?
Entity, yeah.
Entity acquiring by agreement of the compulsory acquisition.
Yes.
So
Or
by just,
compulsory acquisition.
just want to say that
Acquisition.
one again, by agreement.
By agreement or compulsory
Acquisition.
acquisition, part of a parent parcel, thus creating a new rateable assessment. The original parcel less the part acquired, in which case a limit on any increase will continue to apply to new rateable assessment, or C, discounted valuation under Chapter 2, Section 50 of the Land Valuation Act 2010 has increased or
Has ceased.
ceased, or B, there has been a change in differential
D.
rating. What's that?
Sorry.
D.
You said,
You said D.
Yeah, there has been a change in differential rating categories of the land during the 2022-23 financial year, or E, a differential rating category of land in 2021-22 financial year, changes in the 2022-23 financial year, and for land on which the rate levied for the previous financial year was for a period of less than a full year, the different general rate for the previous
Just on that one, differential general rate.
yes, sorry. The differential general rate for the previous year will be analysed and
annualised. On you, thank you.
and the limitation applied to the annualised amount accordance with section 116(2) in brackets B2 of the Local Government Regulation 2012.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Ladbrook. Yeah, it's just got to be spot on because it's the
that's
budget. Okay, do we have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Guthrie, any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak to it? Or against it? We're going to go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
All those against? Okay, 4 all, and I'll use the casting vote, 5-4 in favour of the motion. If I can call for a division. Item 3.7, water utility charges 2022-23. We have a mover, Councillor McMullen.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that pursuant to section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and section 99 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, council make and levy water utility charges for the supply of water services by the council as set out in the table below.
Do we have a seconder?
Hang on, there's number 2.
Yeah, just wait till Kel goes through.
Keep going.
I just want to read it off
Yes,
in
page
case.
154, yes.
Pursuant to section 102(2) of the Local Government Regulation 2012, a water meter is taken to have been read during the period that starts 2 weeks before and ends 2 weeks after the day on which the meter is actually read.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor O'Neill.
Yes.
Okay, Councillor O'Neill was first, Councillor Burkett, but do we have a seconder?
You just asked
So
for a
we had
second.
Okay.
Councillor
That's
O'Neill.
right. Yeah, that's actually a good point. So, now, does anyone wish to speak to the motion? Does the mover wish to speak?
No, I'm right, thanks, Mr.
Right, anyone wish to speak against? Anyone wish to speak? We're going to go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
Okay, 8-0.
On page 159.
Thank you. Item 3.8, sewerage utility charges 2022-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor McMullen.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 99 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council make and levy sewage utility charges for the supply of sewage services by the council as set out in the table below. Anything on the end of it, Kel? That's it?
That's it.
Okay.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Ladbroke.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Did you want to?
No, I'll give that to Councillor Burkett. He tries hard, eh?
I don't take charity, mate. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Burkett, you happy to second that? And
I'm happy to second it.
righto. So does the mover wish to speak to the motion?
No, thanks.
Does anyone wish to speak against or for? We're going to go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
8-0. Okay, 3.9, waste management utility charges 2022-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor Guthrie.
I'd like to move that one, pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 99 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council make and levy waste management utility charges for the supply of waste management services, including the collection, the removal and the storage and disposal of general waste by the Council as set out in the table below. And 2, waste management utility charges are levied on all premises where Council's agent is prepared to provide a refuse collection service. A minimum of one charge will be made and levied on each separate occupancy, and such a charge shall apply whether or not the service is rendered.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor McMullen, any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak to it? We're going to go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
8-0. Item 3.10, Pest Management Special Rate 2022-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor McMullen.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2012, Council make and levy a special rate as follows. Pest Management and Special Rate. A special rate to be known as the Pest Management Special Rate of 0.000174902 cents in the dollar on the unimproved capital value of all rateable land to which the overall plan applies, to fund the cost of pest management, including pest animals and pest plants across the Maranoa. B, the overall plan for the pest management special rate is as follows. A, the service facility or activity for which the plan is made is the cost of pest animals and pest plants management across the Maranoa, including meat and factory baits for 2 coordinated wild dog baiting programs and ad hoc baiting, wild dog bonus payments for scalps and the treatment of high priority pest plants in accordance with the Council's pest management plan. B, the rateable land to which the special rate applies is all rateable land categorised as Category 39 rural, 80 hectares in the 2022-23 financial year.
could be wrong.
Bigger than or equal to?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to, larger than 80 hectares, is it?
Larger than or equal to.
What's that?
Bigger than or equal to?
Greater,
Where's the,
greater
doesn't say
than,
bigger than.
Greater than, sorry.
is the little arrow like
Is it?
that.
Oh, okay. Rural, greater than 80 hectares in the 2022-23 financial year. The estimated cost of carrying on out that activity, the subject of the overall plan, is $538,000. The pest management special rate will levy an estimated $415,000 towards the total estimated cost of carrying out the activity. D, the estimated time for carrying out the overall plan is 1 year. The rateable land or its occupier specially benefit from the service, facility or activity funded by the special rate because it will provide management of pests, both animal and plant, so as to improve the agricultural activities in the land, which will increase productivity for landholders.
Mr Mayor, can I just ask a question? Can I just query category 39 on whether that should be categories 10, 11, 12 and 13? Because if we've adopted different categories,
That's
it's
what
no longer
That's why I
category
balked a bit
39.
first.
Okay, we'll just adjourn for a minute while we get that information.
Yes, that's right.
Yep. Okay, we'll keep going with the meeting. Councillor McMullen, did
Okay,
you?
Mr.
you were
Mayor,
moving
I'll
that
read
motion?
out point B of section B. The rateable land to which the special rate applies is all rateable land categorised as categories, in categories 10 to 15 inclusive, greater than rural, greater than 80 hectares in the 2022-23 financial year.
And you've read the rest of it out?
Yeah, I
haven't
read right through, yeah.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Guthrie, any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak to it? Well, we're going to go to the vote then. All those in favour?
Yes.
And all those against? Okay, that's 6-2, and if I can call for a division, please. Okay, moving on.
He's page 175.
175.
Same issue here.
Yeah, through the chair, yes, just to bring to councillors' attention that, B should be also category 10 to 15, inclusive, rural, greater than 80 hectares.
Okay, page 175, item 3.11, State Government Precept Special Rate 2022-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor McMullen.
Mr Mayor, I'll move that pursuant to section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and section 94 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council may and levy a special rate as follows. The State Government Precept Special Rate, a special rate to be known as the State Government Precept Special Rate of 0.0001717 cents in the dollar on the unimproved capital value of the rateable land to which the overall plan applies to fund the cost of the State Government Precept Charge, research and on-ground works. B, the overall plan of the State Government Precept Special Rate is as follows. The service, facility or activity for which the plan is made is the cost of the State Government Precept for the wild dog barrier fence, pest and weed research and on-ground works. B, the rateable land to which the special rate applies is all rateable land categorised as categories 10 to 15 inclusive, rural greater than 80 hectares on the 2022-23 financial year, in the 2022-23,000 financial year. C, the estimated cost of carrying out the overall plan is $408,204. The State Government Precept Special Rate will levy an estimated $408,204 towards the total estimated cost of carrying out the activity. D, the estimated time for carrying out the overall plan is 1 year. The rateable land or its occupier specially benefits from the service, facility or activity funded by the special rate because it will provide maintenance and renewal of the wild dog barrier fence and the pest and weed research, including on-ground works, which is provided by the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, DAF, so as to improve the agricultural activities on the land, which will increase productivity for landholders. Is that it?
Yep.
And Councillor McMullen, in point B, you were saying you had 2022-23 year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Guthrie. Any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak? We're going to go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
8-0. Item 312, Rural Fire Brigade Special Charge 2022-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor Guthrie.
I'd like to move that 1, pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 94 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council make and levy a special charge to be known as the Rural Fire Brigade Special Charge, as detailed in the table below, on all rateable land serviced by the Rural Fire Brigades for Amby, Mungalala, Yulbar and Orange Hill, to contribute to the operational costs of firefighting and the ongoing provision and maintenance of the rural firefighting equipment for the Rural Fire Brigades as follows. The Rural Fire Brigade of Amby, the special charge will be $74.58. For Mungalala, it will be $74.58. For Yulbar, it will be $74.58. And for Orange Hill, it would be $50. 2, the overall plan for the Rural Fire Brigade special charges is as follows. A, the service, facility or activity for which the plan is made is to contribute to the operational costs of firefighting and the ongoing provision and maintenance of the rural firefighting equipment for the Rural Fire Brigades that operate throughout the areas of Amby, Mungalala, Yulbar and Orange Hill. B, the rateable land to which the plan applies is all rateable land defined by the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services, QFES, Rural Fire Service as being serviced within each Rural Fire Brigade boundary as identified in the QFES administrative map for each brigade. C, the estimated cost of carrying out the overall plan is $20,504. D, the estimated time for carrying out the overall plan is 1 year. Three, the rateable land or its occupier specially benefit from the service, the facility or activity funded by the special charge, because these are local rural fire brigade units respond to emergency fire calls.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Ladbrook. Any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak? We'll go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
8-0.
It's interesting, it doesn't continue on.
188. Item 3.13, levy and payment of rate and charges 2022-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor Ladbrook.
1, pursuant of Section 107 of the Local Government Act Regulation 2012 and Section 114 of the Fire and Emergency Services Act 1990, Council's rates and charges and the State Government Emergency Management Fire and Rescue Levy be levied. Rescue levy be levied, yep. for the half of the year, 1st of July 2022 to the 31st of December 2022, in August, September 2022, and for the half year, the 1st of January 2023 to the 30th of June 2023, in February, March 2023, pursuant of Section 118 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the council rates and charges and the state government's emergency management, fire and rescue levy be paid within 30 days of the issue of the rate notice.
Yeah, so on that point too, that was 30 clear days, was that correct, right down the bottom?
They'll be paid within 30 clear days of the issue of the rates notice.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Guthrie. Any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak? We're going to go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
8-0. Item 13, item 3.14, total value of changes in rates and utilities. Do we have a mover?
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Just in point number 1 there, where it says 2021-22 financial year is 9%, what is it for this 2022-23?
Through the chair, the comparative change between the 2 years is 9%. That's how it's meant to read.
Sorry?
The comparative change between the 2 years is 9%.
What does that mean exactly?
That the total value of the change expressed as a percentage in the rates and utility charges budget to be levied for the 2022-23 financial year, compared with the rates and utility charges levied in the previous budget, is 9%. So the overall change, the total value of the change, is 9%.
So the difference between that year and this year is 9%?
Yes.
The last budget and this budget? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to move the council adopt the following. 1, pursuant to section 1696 and 1697, both in brackets, of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the total value of the change expressed as a percentage in the rates and utility charges budgeted to be levied for the 2022-23 financial year, compared with the rates and utility charges levied in the previous budget 2021-22 financial year, is 9%. 2, for the purpose of this calculation, any discounts and rebates are excluded. Do we have a seconder? Councillor McMullen. Any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak? We're going to go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
9-0.
8-0.
8-0, sorry, good point. Okay, moving on. Item 3.15, discount on rates 2022-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor Guthrie.
I'd like to move that pursuant to Section 130 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the differential general rates made and levied shall be subject to a discount of the percentage set out in the table below, the discount on differential general rates being 5%. If paid within the discount period of 30 days of the date of issue of the rate notice, provided that A, all of the aforementioned rates and charges are paid within 30 days of the date of issue of the rate notice. B, all other rates and charges appearing on the rate notice that are not subject to a discount are paid within 30 days after the date of issue of the rate notice. And C, all other overdue rates and charges relating to the rateable assessment are paid within 30 days of the date of issue of the rate notice.
Okay, we have a second. Councillor Ladbrook. Any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak to it? Then we'll go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
8-0. Item 3.16, page 204, interest on all overdue rates and charges for 2022-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor Ladbrook.
I'd like to move that pursuant of section 133 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the levy of interest is...
Just on that level of interest.
The level of interest.
the level of interest is set as compound interest, compound interest on daily rests at the rate per annum set in the table below. Interest on all overdue rates and charges is 4%. Number 2, as is to be charged on all overdue rates.
And is to be charged.
Yeah, it's, the first one.
And is to be charged on all overdue rates or charges. Council has determined that rates or charges will be determined as overdue for the charging of interest if they remain unpaid after 60 days from the due date of the relevant rate notice.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor McMullen. Any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak to it? We'll go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
All those against? 7-1 if I can call for a division. Page 209, 3.17, Significant Business Activity Assessment 2022-23. Do we have a mover? Is that you, Councillor? No, it must have been Councillor McMullen then.
Mr Mayor, I'll move that the result of the significant business activity assessment be received, noting that no further action is required.
Okay, item 3.18, Code of Competitive.
Want a seconder and a vote on it?
Sorry, yeah, that's a good point. I'm on to the next one.
You
Do
know.
we have a seconder? Councillor Guthrie, any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak to it? We're going to go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
8-0. Okay, now we can move on to 3.18, Code of Competitive Conduct 2022-23. We have a mover. Councillor Guthrie.
I'd like to move that council not apply the Code of Competitive Conduct to the following business activities for 2022-23. Building certifying activity, quarry operations, sale yards operations, waste management, airport operations, water and sewerage services, gas operations, plant services, internal function, and roads operations, mainly RMPC. Given the level of expenditure in the business activities and the little or no competition for the services provision, council sees no public benefit in applying for the Code of Competitive Conduct at this time.
We have a second, Councillor McMullen. Any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak? We'll go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
8-0. Item 3.19, Draft Operational Plan 22-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor McMullen.
Mr Mayor, I'll move that council receive and consider the draft 2022-23 operational plan as presented.
It won't be considered.
Endorse.
Council receive and endorse the draft.
I'll second that, Mr Mayor.
Okay, we've got a seconder, Councillor Burkett. Any opposition? Does anyone wish to speak to it? We'll go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yes.
8-0.
Yes, you do that one, will you?
Yep, I think so. I think so, yeah.